Well, hi, Carlton. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Marty. How are you?
I am good. It's good to chat with you. We can reminisce on your Ironman in Chattanooga. I'd love to start by just hearing a little bit about your background in triathlon.
All right. Well, I'm 53 years old. I'm married, have two daughters. One's they're 27 and 23 respectively. Started triathlon back in 2013. I blame my wife for getting me hooked up with this. She was kind of doing some at the point when I had no swimming background at the time. I had some cycling uh, background already because when we started dating back in 2011, she sort of got me hooked into that. But she eventually talked me into triathlon and got the bug. And since then, I've completed 111 triathlons, mostly sprint triathlons, maybe 10 or 11, maybe Olympics, and I think 14 half distances, and finally one full Ironman.
Yeah.
So, which I did last year. President of the Greenville Triathlon Club, which we're trying to continue to grow the sport in our community here. So, been part of that for the last couple of years, and so yeah, that's what I'm pretty much all about.
Yeah. And when you reached out to me, you reached out for nutrition help. What led you to sign up for Chattanooga as your first Ironman?
Well, a couple of reasons. For many reasons, I saw a lot of people. I had already started the sport way before that was coming in and doing Ironmans, and they were finishing them. I'm like, okay, I really need to kind of see. I'm just curious. Can I do it first of all? What's the time commitment? But I wanted to also check the box. I think I had told you that many times before, and but I was always had reservations about because I understood I respected the distance first and foremost, and the time commitment that was going to come with that. And obviously, at that time, many years ago, I had just daughters growing up with commitments to family and all that. Just said, okay, maybe when they are out of college, we can go for it. Um, and that's kind of how it sort of materialized. Also, just a lot of learning lessons along the way, doing 70.3s and learning what to do and what not to do, obviously. But did Chattanooga first time back in 2023. And I loved the area. Thought it was a just fantastic race event area. Obviously, a lot of people from our community here go there pretty much almost every other year to race. Knew there was obviously a full distance that was offered there. I said, well, if that was going to be the event, that should be the event because I also felt like with some of these events, you do run the risk. Like if you look at Ironman Florida, for example, you always have a risk of, okay, can a hurricane or weather potentially impact your swim event? And while I'm pretty understanding, like if I'm only going to do an Ironman once, maybe, or my lifetime, I might maybe one day hop in another one again. I want to make sure I pick a I picked the less risk adverse one that doesn't have the swim getting canceled. Plus, I'm also familiar with the area, and I really like the lookup challenge option too that was associated with it too, that they do offer. So you get another medal, so that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, Plus, Chattanooga's drivable. There's friends that you're going to typically have racing going to the event, so there'll be shared training opportunities, obviously. We also saved on cost a little bit with Airbnb, so we had like three. I had three other roommates, and so that helped. That was helpful. And you hear the horror stories about airfare. I mean, I know you and Corral with how much y'all travel for races could speak to airfare and just travel and all that. To the York side, I didn't want to drive. I'll just drive. So I really enjoyed that piece of it. And like I said, just the area itself is just an awesome town, which made it so sensible. And then just the timing of the race. It was more of a fall race. Kind of you could get a good build throughout the year. Plus, you knew there was going to be heat. That was going to be a factor in the race. You would already be well trained for it because you're training throughout the summer months. So those things just led up to being the most sensible choice.
Yeah, a lot to think about, especially with your first Ironman.
Yep.
Now, when you reached out to me, or maybe before you reached out to me, what were your primary nutrition concerns or challenges before we started working together?
Biggest things off the bat was just I had a basic understanding of fueling, but didn't really understood like what exactly to I should be putting in and how much be putting in terms of fueling from that perspective. I have to obviously um, just piggyback to some of the prior races that I did. I had decent success, but even when I fueled then, I was using Tailwind. I had used, I mean, my first half I used G2 Gatorade, which probably wouldn't use that again. Uh, I used some UCAN gels. I experimented with taking water on the bike. One three distances is I would do really well on the bike, and then I would come into the run, and for whatever reason, whether it was heat acclimation, I didn't feel correctly, I maybe took too much. The first start of it was Ironman Augusta in 2022, where I immediately noticed I had a good run to start, but in the middle, I just felt bloated and I couldn't take anything down from a run nutrition perspective. So, okay, this is different. Um, so chalked it up to maybe I think I took some Coke or water at the aid stations. That kind of helped it, but realizing in there, okay, this is an issue. And further distance events after that, I kind of noticed a continuing pattern. I mean, it got a little bit better, but then what you don't want to do is go in the opposite direction and underfuel because
Mhm.
that could be even more disastrous consequences. So I said, okay, well, maybe I need to take more water and maybe dilute this. So obviously, one of the biggest ones was I was actually doing White Lake back in early 24 and then it completely bonked the run. And it was only about 75-degree temperatures out. Had again, if this totally due to heat acclimation or what does this totally due to? And I was able to get a little bit better. I think that same year did Ironman Louisville 70.3 was better. I took more water on the bike, but still, I just didn't feel like I felt like something. And 25. So right in there, I said I knew I was going to do. I was something was to change. Um, so yeah, and I'm gonna have to figure this out because you no, absolutely not. You have to have the honor. You got to be honest with yourself, and you got to say, okay, you're not gonna be able to muscle that. You're not gonna be able to sugarcoat that. Yeah, you could survive through a half, but you will not make it through a full. You will end up DNFing, and that you have to face that harsh reality within yourself and say, okay, well maybe it's time to get advice from people who know a heck of a lot more than me. And that's why you entered the picture.
Well, thank you for reaching out.
Yeah.
And how would you describe our process of working together on your daily and sports nutrition?
Well, I want to piggyback to the webinar. I have to piggyback to the webinar first. You were awesome with the webinar you did for the club. That gave me somewhat of a base, which was fantastic. And one critical change was how you broke out kind of how you should fuel, little tips and tricks there that you gave in our webinar. The biggest immediate change was the difference between Tailwind and Infinite, which I saw Infinite in there. And I remember many years ago you had mentioned and you might have told me at one point and in a either a comment thread on Facebook or whatever that a suggestion would be to have Infinite on the bike and Tailwind on the run. And that always stuck with me for some reason over the years. Maybe that was just karma talking to me later, and for years later or something. Um, but I remember that, and I was like, huh. And the difference was because Infinite was a maltodextrin, and I think Telwyn was I think, a dextrose. And from an absorption perspective, that was the reason why Infinite was more recommended to be more on half distance and full distance races. So you broke it out by products that were recommendations, and I that blew me away. And I was like, And I always joke with you from then on since then. I was like, you answered a question without even me answering it, asking you it. So, and so that for me was game changing. And at that point, I switched immediately to infinite fructose. I'd already been using the fueling app a little bit, so I had some sense of how much I needed to be taking in because I had started that process because I knew I needed to do that going into the year. I knew there was something off. But that alone in itself was a game changer because then I went to Ironman Chattanooga 70.3 in the spring and completely, my run was completely different because I did that combination. Um, so then, coming out of that with that comments, I think I saw you at Lakeside, and I know that's when I kind of started the conversation. Say, hey, we need to. I need to make absolutely certain that everything is on point here, and there's no one I just don't. There's no one else I trust than you. Because I had that confidence that I knew you could get me where I needed to be, or I needed you to tell me if, to be brutally honest, if what I was doing was stupid or and not didn't make sense, or if I was close and maybe I needed to tweak just a few things. I needed that brutal honesty, and you absolutely provided that. And we went to, I think it was August of that year, and I knew I said, okay, well, we're working good now, but about a month, 2 months out in my head, I knew, okay, Marnie's got to take this thing over and just make sure that I am right where I need to be. And from there, that's what really caused me to say, okay, let's do this. And then it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we did work together for quite a bit of time to really
Yeah.
dial things in.
Yeah. So,
And what were some specific changes that you made with your daily and sports nutrition that you feel helped make a big difference on race day?
where do I start? Let's see. Right off the bat, I just mentioned it, the infamous fructose. One thing you immediately changed me, you got me out of 20-ounce bottles to 26-ounce bottles because it was too concentrated. And so we got into 26-ounce bottles, which made sense. And that was much more of a game changer in that sense. So that was one big change that you made. One tip that I did steal from you and Carell earlier, I did buy the naked running belt, which you guys had recommended many a times before. I had challenges previously with a naked running belt, and the ability for the naked running belt to hold like 10-ounce flask is so much easier. The Nathan, I think that it was just, it didn't work. But the naked absolutely did. So I give you guys credit for that because you guys recommended it before. I just say I just stole the idea from you guys.
Yeah. We
You
practice
told
what
me
we preach.
uh, I was using UCAN gels. You told me to ditch those, which I did, which was a game changer.
And what was
Um,
the reason for that? Why do you think we did that?
just difficult for that to be processed into the gut and absorbed from a digestion perspective. And you were very adamant with me about from a liquid perspective was going to be much easier. And that was the main reason. And you weren't against gels. It's just like for me, just that was what was gonna work.
And we
And
practiced it a few times too, so that
and we
you could
did, yeah,
make
we
sure that
did,
you felt comfortable with it and you trusted it. Because a lot of people feel that with gels that it gives that immediate source of energy, and they're worried about not ha
yeah,
they're worried about running out of energy. But we wanted to build that trust that you were getting everything you needed from the liquid calories, which in
yeah,
a race like Chattanooga, where it's very hot, we wanted to rely primarily on those.
absolutely. And that was the other thing. One of the biggest things that you changed up too was you made me do the 30-minute repeats back to the house in the running, and you made me take one 10-ounce flask of water, one 10-ounce flask of Tailwind, and basically simulate the water as going through an aid station. And I was super disciplined about changing that up. You definitely suggested that and kept it to still liquid only, but also too, um, I was able to use some of that water extra to also cool an Omnius running cap that I was using. That's not the primary thing that helps, but making sure I'm constantly taking water every single mile. And by doing that and then going back to the house using the jewelry bags that you suggested that I get, because I already had prepackaged uh, tailwind for the run in those, and then refill, and then go back out 30 minutes, 15 minutes out, 15 minutes back, and then repeat again. So that gave me into a very disciplined habit routine of practicing as if I'm going through aid stations. And that was going to be just basically rinse repeat on race day when we got to that. But the bigger thing aspect of that was I practiced it and I repeated it many a time after we started doing that, and it just worked. And so ultimately, that was a huge game changer. You told me to get rid of biscuits, which was because I love my biscuits and my
Now
buttermilk
we're
biscuits.
talking about daily nutrition, right? We're not talking
Yeah,
about
moving
sport.
on to daily nutrition. So you end up. I now eat bagels in the morning, thanks to Marnie.
I suggested it. I didn't make you do anything.
I did, but I took that advice and ran with it.
Yes,
Um,
more carb dense source to help
exactly,
make sure you're well fueled before your workouts.
absolutely. And then a banana, highly recommended. Two eggs, uh, or a protein bar, but not both. And so that's we did that, and then just make sure again. The other thing too to kind of move to a I really like the 2 day out strategy from a race. That was something I didn't know before.
Carb loading.
You- Yeah, the carb loading that you recommended doing the pot. You do a pizza. I do a pizza too. I'll do it, but now doing it 2 days out versus 1 day out, and then doing the Chipotle bowl, which you got me turned on to, which that was a game changer in itself. The 1 day out. So
And the rice and the chicken,
that
very simple.
exactly. The sequence of that was huge.
Yeah.
So those are things that we made changes, and that was awesome. Um, one other thing too, just can I emphasize? I know one thing that you and Carell are also are big believers in is the concept of self sufficiency and bringing your own stuff on the run. Can I emphasize how big of a deal is that? Because even though at the time, mortal hydration was being offered on the course, that was not something that made a whole lot of sense for most athletes doing those races at the time. And so ultimately, you want to train with what you're going to use on race day. You don't need to be changing it up. And so ultimately, the concept of self sufficiency was huge in that sense, to where bring what you got. I was thinking, man, how am I going to do all these bottles? And then you threw the jewelry bag concept idea on me, and I was like, whoa, okay, that works. That makes sense. We'll do that. Um, and then it was less weight because I was thinking I was going to have to carry like 4 or 5 bottles, or so I didn't have to do that. That was cool. Um, See that piece was huge. Special needs. I use my house. So I even changed up just little things like. Um, it wasn't really something that's nutrition, but just thinking, discussing philosophy in terms of how we handle special needs on the bike. Because we talked about bottles again, and we really kind of rehearsed and really talked through that. So fortunately, where I live, I can also do. I can actually simulate a 56-mile route that's an out and back to my house, and I can use my house as special needs. So I kind of did that in training, and the house would be special needs, and then I had to make sure I had to get in and get out of the house pretty quickly, as if you know treated like a special needs. So any kind of training thing that I did, I made sure that that was kind of the same route. And from a time management perspective, it was also huge because I could manage my time in relation to the day as well. But also just having those bottles ready, and then I would just take the 326-ounce bottles out. I'd come back, boom, come inside, quick potty break, get my bottles, go back out, hit it hard, and stay in my zones, and come back. And then so just the concept of, okay, some people I don't even know if they use special needs in every race that they go to, but like for me, it was like, okay, we're going to use it. There's no reason not to.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of talk through that and everything. but just some of the small tweaks in nutrition, just on the breakfast side of it with the fueling, really specific small tweaks that we made on the actual fueling while actually you're working out and training and racing, and then the sequence of what you're taking in from a food perspective, 2 days out, 1 days out, things to not eat or stay away from, which I did. And that was just ultimately game changing for me. And it paid a huge dividend.
Great to hear. Yeah, so if I could just kind of summarize this process, it was really good that you reached out with early in the summer. So we had the whole summer to
Yeah.
work on your nutrition. And that allowed us to focus on first trying different products. So we had that experimentation phase where you were able to try different products. You knew the race was well in the future, several months away, and you could start to figure out if you liked the product, if you didn't, trying out different strategies with fueling. And then once we got that down, we could also focus on your pre-workout nutrition, so dialing that in, your day-to-day nutrition. And then as we got closer to the race, we were able, and I don't coach you, so I was working with the training that you were being given, and we were able to then simulate specific strategies that we would be using for race day. So by
Yeah.
working together and you communicating with me on a weekly basis and giving me feedback, what you liked, what you didn't like, and being very good at applying the tips, but also giving me feedback so we could work together as a team. We had several weeks that we could really practice and put yourself into similar situations that would mimic the demands of the Ironman and specifically Ironman Chattanooga with the heat, with the hills, and practicing the aid stations and special needs and being out there for a long time, running on heavy tired legs. So we were able to practice all that. And I think that's one thing that a lot of athletes don't really take into consideration is it's a process, and it's a process of learning what works for your body and then practicing in similar scenarios.
Mhm. I would agree with every
And
bit
you
of
were
that.
you were a great student as well, just because you were receptive to my advice, but you also asked questions and you gave me feedback. So it was a pure dialogue, not me just telling you what to do.
Oh, yeah, 100% for sure. Agree.
Now, I'm sure people want to know how your race went. Did it go well for your first Ironman? Did you struggle? Did you even cross that finish line? So, can you walk through your race day performance and how your nutrition held up?
I couldn't have asked for a better race day. And it went flawlessly. It started off the morning, 4:30 a.m., 12 ounces of orange juice, a bagel, 2 eggs, and a banana. And ready to roll. A little bit of infinite prior at swim start. Got into the swim, pretty much smooth sailing the whole way. No issues. I got out of the water. I was ready to go. And just I was pumped. I was ready to just attack the day. We got to obviously took out on the bike, started the bike, and ironically, the Ironman full course distance I think is it's fairly hilly considering. I'm not sure how it compares to the previous distance two loop one. That's probably comparable, but we have definitely some hills and elevation there. But I was ready for that. Um, but basically started feeling right off the bat, the goal is by the time you get to special needs, which I think was around mile 57, 58, I knew I had to be done with my 3 bottles of Infinite, which I took on the bike with me. The one thing that I did that I haven't never really done a lot, even in halves, that I've now since changed, is I did go through because I knew the heat could be potentially an issue. I did go through aid stations and take water, every single one, and trying to get about, I'd say anywhere between 10 to 15 ounces down before you gotta ditch your water bottle and throw it aside. But that was also huge, just from just a cooling perspective too, because again, when you're racing out there, yeah, it may not be hot yet, but it's going to be.
So you're also
And
using that to like pour on your body?
also, yes, I did that too,
Yep.
and just constantly did that. Um, because again, you have to think ahead of the curve too, and really be cognizant of, okay, you start your day and you start with 7, 8 o'clock start time. Yeah, it may be 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning on the bike. Well, guess what? You're gonna be on the bike for 5 hours.
Mhm.
And in 2 hours, it's going to be way different.
Mhm.
And it's just, it makes more sense to do it on schedule and practice it, and then just wait till something happens that goes wrong, and then next thing you know, you're in trouble.
Mhm.
So I stayed very disciplined with doing that, and didn't matter if how great I was feeling. I kept with the same consistency. Every aid station, take water, make sure I get my 3 bottles down. When I got the special needs, I think, like I said, around mile 57, 58, right out the back, get my 3 bottles, go over. Great opportunity to stop, get a quick potty break real quick, then get back on the bike,
Mhm.
go back at it. And, when I'm sitting here at mile 90 and I'm pushing same watts, and I'm feeling just as good as I felt at mile 30, that tells me that something's going really, really well.
Yeah.
But the other thing too, I'm not doing is I'm not getting away from what I'm supposed to be doing in terms of my watts and my paces and stuff. I'm staying within my range because I still do know that I got 26 miles I got to run.
No.
So that held up really, really well. Got to transition to. Uh, Had some tailwind initially in there in T2. Did a full change because and not all triathletes do that, but some of us do. It's up to what you feel comfortable. At that point, I'm not trying to break any age group records. I have one goal in mind, and that's just to finish consistently through all three disciplines and feel good about what I did. Um, and so I did a full change, and then had my naked running belt, took out two tailwind flask, um, and then pretty much as I started to go through the aid stations, I stayed in my zone and stayed in my paces, but I walked pretty much every aid station. I might have skipped the very first one, and started at mile 2 because I'd already fueled enough in the first one that I wanted to get my legs underneath me and everything. But as I started to fuel, I started at aid station. I would go in, I'd take water to sip a little bit. I might take a little bit of Coke. But then I would take more water at the end of the aid station as I walked through it, and I would pour that on me as either to cool myself or underneath my jersey there, or on the top of my head just to keep cooling myself. Because again, just being super mindful of not knowing how warm it's going to get.
Yeah.
Always be thinking strategically of that. So I kept into that same pace. I knew around mile 7 or 8 that I would ultimately empty my two running flask.
Mhm.
And when I got to that, I just had my jewelry bags out, got my two bags out, refilled them in there, put my tailwind back in, and one thing I didn't realize that you could take a full bottle from the volunteers. You told me that tip. Said, hey, just you give me a bottle here, and did that. Filled those up really quickly. Got back on the run course. Did the same thing in every aid station. I said I didn't care at that point. I was going to repeat the same thing through every aid station because ironically, this is the first time I've ever ran a marathon. I've never done a standalone marathon prior to doing this event. So I had no kind of, most people who have done that at least have probably have done a marathon prior. They have a little bit of information to pull back from or experience to pull back from. I didn't have any of that at all, except just a half marathon. And I know this was going to be vastly different. So at that point, I'm sticking with what's working. I'm not going to take any risk. And I just kept on with that. And I was able to maintain, like, I think I ran between 9 minute and the 9:30 30-second miles. I think I had a few high eights in there, which was cool, kind of cool. But I didn't decide to go too fast. But I stayed very disciplined with that same strategy the whole way through. I might have not done anything at mile 25 because at that point I knew I was good, and I was going to bring it home. And plus, you knew that the last part of that's a downhill, so it's and by that time you're already pumped and you got that energy because you hear the crowd and everything. So that's pretty awesome too. But I stayed very disciplined with staying to that consistent routine, and I mean, finish 11 hours, 17 minutes, and 4 seconds, and 11th in your age group. Sad to hear I missed my 10th. I missed 10th place by like 3 or 4 seconds, but at that point, I really didn't care
Yeah.
because I'm like, I accomplished what I set out to accomplish. It was to be under 12 hours. I wanted to finish the race and not have any wrecks.
Mhm.
And that was the three goals I set for the day. And and we absolutely knocked it out of the park. Couldn't have asked for better weather that day. It was just everything was great. And to go that time, I mean, I still remember running up by one of the aid stations and Joel Collier's up there and he's like, dude, you're doing great. I'm like, don't talk to me.
Yep.
Like I'm in my zone. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
I gotta stay on track here. Um, and
Yeah.
so it was awesome. But to finish that, and I couldn't have asked for a better day.
Yeah.
Plus the post race food. Oh my gosh, that was good too.
Sometimes it's appetizing, sometimes you don't want it, but
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, but I think this is really a testament, and what I really liked about your first Ironman experience is that the nutrition wasn't something that you were overthinking, and it didn't bring any fear. You had a lot of confidence in your nutrition. We went through some of those what if scenarios. If this happens, let's do this instead, or be mindful of this. So we talked about all of that, but most importantly is you had confidence and you had a plan and a strategy and you practice that consistently in training. And that helped you not only train your gut, but also it was one less thing to focus on and to worry about on race day. You knew exactly what you needed to do and what it needed to look like to execute it, and you followed through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could have asked for a better day.
Yeah. And what advice, and you was a very special day. What advice would you give to other athletes who are struggling with their nutrition, especially in long distance events, especially hot events, humid events, hilly events, things like that?
Biggest thing is don't be afraid to ask for help and guidance. It's
Mm,
okay. I mean, even in my case, I mean, I mentioned that I mean, I'm a 12 to 13 year triathlete, and I'm asking in year 13, I'm asking for help. That's 100% okay. It doesn't matter how many years you got in the sport. You never have too much experience not to learn something new. You don't know what you don't know. And that's the biggest thing. And I knew this was the piece that was going to be the piece that I didn't know as much as I needed to, which is why you surround yourself with people that know more than you, because ultimately you gain a lot greater perspective and wisdom from that. And I'm a humble enough person in this sport because this sport has humbled me enough with the adversity that I've experienced with 70.3s, bonking runs, all that. You'll humble you very, very quickly.
mhm,
And you learn to respect the distances, and you also learn to respect the people that have the wisdom to give you the tools and the wisdom to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
yeah.
And I think that's important. And ultimately, it's you do the race by yourself, but you don't finish the race alone.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of people that are hosts supporting you, following you, tracking you, your family, coaches. Yeah, and there's plenty of people that you reach out, you sought counsel with. Um, Things that you learn from people at prior races you go to, all that builds and it all matters. That's the biggest thing is to ask for help and guidance. Don't be too prideful. A lot of triathletes think they get everything figured out, but just to be have that humble a sense of humbleness and say, you don't have everything figured out. It's okay. But you
The Ironman, it's a big investment. It's a big undertaking, and nutrition is a big component to it.
so yeah, but that would
Anything
be the
else you'd
biggest.
like to mention? It was just such an honor to work with you. I really enjoy working with athletes like yourself that are excited and have this,
Yeah.
you know, great opportunity to put together something so memorable in your first Ironman. And I really enjoyed working with you. Is there anything else you'd like to mention?
I just don't be afraid. Like I said, don't be afraid. Like the sport is a great teacher you how to do hard things, and when you have adversity happen, know how to overcome it and rise above it. This sport has taught me more, uh, just in terms of not just race lessons, but life lessons. I mean, in 2024, I had a pretty significant bike wreck and broken collarbone. And at that point, I'm questioning or not, okay, well, I'll be able to do an Ironman the next year. And here I came back and was able to do what I did. But, you know, you learn from adversity. You can either pick yourself up and continue to move forward, or do nothing. I chose to do something. And ultimately, you don't have to be in a rush to do an Ironman. The only other thing I would ever add is, take some time to do some short distance races, learn the sport, learn the art of racing.
Absolutely.
There's a significant pattern with overuse injuries where people sometimes want to jump into the big distances. Um, too quickly, too fast sometimes, and then they get injured, and then they don't take the time to understand, hey, what does it actually take to do this kind of sport? So, have a sense of joy, and find out what you love. And this racing is fun, and it brings a lot of joy. Um, and ultimately, it's hard. It's not something that you just can wing in 12 weeks and you be ready for it.
Yeah.
It's a process. Your body's got to get used to this level of distance racing because it takes time. And I'm not saying take 13 years like me, but um, but I would say, probably not the best idea to do it in your first year or maybe second year. Build up and get some experience, learn to actually race, learn about pacing and all those things,
Yeah.
and then ultimately surround yourself with people who will provide you good counsel and good advice,
Yeah.
because
Thank you.
that's invaluable.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you and for sharing your story. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure as always.
Thank you.